Non-US Redditors, what are the greatest conspiracies of your country? It's Em here. Please enjoy some spooky stories, and I'll see you guys in the next one where I'll be adding a few of my own thoughts. Story 1. I'm from the US, but I need to share with someone because I've not had such a difficult time smiling through a tinfoil conversation in a long time. I work in a paint store. I sell paints, primers, tools, all sorts of things. Yesterday, a woman came in looking for some dust mask to protect her from chemtrails because she wanted to work outside, and they're what is making everyone sick. She then told me she had too much barium and aluminum in her body, and that's why she had a cough. They're spraying really heavily now, apparently because they are being taken to court. She then paid me with a $20 bill and accepted a thermal-printed receipt without even a glimmer of discomfort. A few points of interest here. We live between two small airports used primarily by very small, very isolated communities to commute to the city, because it's actually cheaper and safer than driving the very dangerous back roads to and from those towns. Remember a ballot measure that passed a few years ago for aerial hydro seeding in our area, as we are a high fire risk location that maintains reservoirs and is prone to erosion and mudslides. Also, have you ever accepted a damp, sweaty $20 bill in the middle of summer? I have. And I'm sure nobody washed it as it was passed along. I think I read something about a report coming out regarding thermal printed receipt paper releasing BPA when introduced to alcohol-based compounds like hand sanitizer and lotion. And this chick is worried about frozen carbon monoxide exhaust trails. I didn't even bat an eyelash. I didn't argue, and I hid under my desk for about 5 minutes after she left trying to cope. My boss joined me. FML, I move into Jupiter. Story 2. Two major conspiracy theories here in Spain about the 11M Islamic attack in the metro of Madrid. Little background. Our government first says the attack has been made by ETA, a separatist terrorist group. A few days later, this shows to be a lie only 1 or 2 days before the election for president. So it makes a big change in the voting. Lots of people still believe that it was ETA. They were fueled for years by some of the popular and serious newspapers here. Some people even think that the other party, who wins the elections after that, planned it all. About the 23F. Background 23F of 1981. After 5 years of democracy, a general of the Guardia Civil, some kind of military police, rushed into the parliament and took our government and politicians as hostages. Another squad takes to TV Central. Within the next hour, some of the still fascist generals of the army seemed to give support to the coup. Our king gave a speech declaring he's against it. Finally, the majority of the army was loyal to democracy and the coup failed. Okay, the thing in here is that we have the records of the phone calls that were made from the parliament. Terjo, the guy who led the rush in there, talked with some generals for hours. He asked, when will the white elephant come? So, who is the white elephant? Still unknown. But for some people, it was our king that was supporting the coup, but viewing the lack of army support changes his allegiance. Others say that he had planned it all from the start as a way to gain the people's support. Somebody commented, I find the 23F example very interesting. Thanks for sharing. Story 3. Last summer, the Chinese government suddenly announced strict air and rail traffic control between almost every major airport between Beijing and Shanghai, in the name of military exercises. The original announcement was very abrupt and the wording of it was fishy as heck, because it did not mention the military at all, but high-frequency exercises by other users. Massive flight delays were expected to last for 26 days. People speculated that a high-ranking general was trying to escape a corruption investigation, and subsequent arrest by cross-dressing as an old woman in order to escape overseas. Rumors said he was caught in the customs queue and the government tightened traffic control in order to catch any of his buddies trying to escape. My mother and I were about to fly to Shanghai from our hometown for a conference when this announcement was made, just 1 day before our flight. We were actually quite concerned because on the day of the announcement, many flights and train rides were not delayed but straight up canceled, with no explanation at all. Then we went to the airport the next day and everything seemed normal, as if no such announcements were made at all. Our flight actually arrived in Shanghai on time, when delays up to an hour is actually the norm for domestic air travels in China. The mythical exercise by other users never really happened, and the possible 26 days delay was quickly forgotten by everyone within 2 days. Story 4. I have no idea how common it is, and I highly doubt that it was common at all. But I dated a girl from Romania who didn't think the moon was real. We were looking up at the sky when she turned to me and said, "You know, we're just looking at a reflection." I asked her what she meant by that. She said how everyone knew the moon was nothing more than reflected light bouncing off Earth and projected on the sky. Now, I'm not one to jump and tell folks that they're wrong, but I was young. I just couldn't let this one stand. I explained my problems with this theory. Finally, in frustration, I asked her how she explained the moon landings. Those people faked it, she said. What people? You know, she looked around nervously. The Jews? The rational part of my brain said that she was just a messed up woman, repeating what a crazy and frankly racist relative told her. The romantic part of me wants to believe that people in Romania don't believe in the moon. Because there's something beautiful about something so ridiculous. Romanians, please, when you pop this bubble of my belief, do it gently. Somebody commented, lol, I'm from Romania, and honestly, I have never heard of this. Story 5. Belgium has 2 major ones. 1. In 1934, King Albert I died while rock climbing in the Ardennes. He was a very experienced climber, and this was an easy climb. There were no witnesses, his body was found quite far from the rocks, and some other things led to a series of theories. The most common is that he was killed by French spies because he was a strong supporter of Belgium neutrality and didn't want to side with anyone. 2. The second one is something called de rose ballon, which translates to the pink ballots. There were rumored to have been wild drugs and orgy parties for all the rich and famous, including politicians, in Belgium. They were rumored to have ties with underage drug trafficking and even kidnapping. Because of all of the powerful and high-placed members of these parties, it was all covered up. Somebody commented, the second one is currently coming to light in the UK. All the way from police officers to MPs in the UK could be involved, and mainstream media have been picking it up for a while. Story 6. Zimbabwe. I'm not sure if it counts as a conspiracy theory, if everyone but the ruling party believe it to be true. But since independence, there have been a string of assassinations by vehicular accident, starting with ZANU-PF comrade Josiah Tonogara, Mbage's biggest threat to his presidency, though various lesser threats in the 80s and 90s to Susan Sargani, wife of opposition leader Morgan Sargani in 2009, and more since. I remember hearing jokes about which political threat was going to have a head-on with an army truck by the late 80s. No one is claiming the roads are safe. There are too many vehicles with no lights. Buses with chassis so bent they take a lane and a half and will overtake you at 160 kilometers an hour. And God knows how many missing road marking signs, potholes, and animals. But still, the circumstances around these deaths have been far too suspicious. Story 7. The biggest one in Canada is probably regarding the Avro Arrow. Canada isn't really big on conspiracy theories, not a very paranoid nation. But when it comes to the Avro Arrow, everyone agrees that there was a conspiracy to cancel the project because of influence from other defense companies like Lockheed, who didn't want to lose their defense contracts to Canada, given the Avro Arrow was years ahead in terms of technology. Somebody commented, my boyfriend works in aviation, and over time a news story comes up about the government buying new fighter jets. He goes on a rampage about the Avro Arrow. It also had a significant impact on the aviation industry as a whole in Canada. Aviation could have been a huge modern-day job source if the Arrow project hadn't been scrapped. Story 8. Bielefeld-Verschwörung. According to this theory, the German city of Bielefeld does not exist. Anyone who claims to have been there, has relatives living there, even seen a football match with Arminia Bielefeld playing, is one of them. However, there is a second layer on tinfoil there, as I've heard of a second theory claiming that Bielefeld-Verschwörung is a hoax created by them to make the population of Germany believe there is nothing in Bielefeld. In reality, Bielefeld is supposed to be a top-secret facility where they are doing some weird stuff. Evil organizations usually doing conspiracy theories. Somebody commented, the Bielefeld conspiracy isn't a conspiracy at all. It's a joke about conspiracies. People pretend Bielefeld does not exist. As a German, because it doesn't. As a joke. Story 9. During the American Revolution, anyone who didn't want to betray England or be involved with the war fled to Canada for some peace. During the American Civil War, all the pacifists and people who didn't want to choose sides fled to Canada to avoid conflict. Anyone who was coming over to North America from Europe during the American Revolution or the Civil War didn't want to arrive in a war zone, so they instead went to Canada, which is why the majority of Canadians are so nice. Somebody commented, those aren't really conspiracies. There's tons of history regarding the Loyalists set in Canada during and after the Revolutionary War. There's also the Vietnam War, when many draft dodgers came to Canada to avoid going to war. Story 10. The UK government has been hiding a lot of high-profile pedophiles for a long time. I'm not really sure you can call this a conspiracy when both the US and Russian governments say that it's true, and that members of the government, people working for the BBC, and others in high positions are all involved. Somebody commented, this doesn't even qualify as a conspiracy. Everybody knows it. Foreign agencies tipped off our government many times, and they were like, right, we'll definitely get on that. But nothing ever happened. Jimmy Savile was hugely involved with royalty and the Knights of Malta. Google it. And so was Prince Andrew. Story 11. Estonian here. A cruise ship, MS Estonia, sank in the Baltic Sea in 1994 in one of the worst maritime disasters of the 20th century, and there's a load of conspiracy theories about it, like a magazine claiming that laboratory tests on debris recovered illegally from Estonia's bow yielded trace evidence of a deliberate explosion, which they allege was concealed by the Swedish, British, and Russian governments to cover up an intelligence operation smuggling military hardware via the ship. In the autumn of 2004, a former Swedish customs officer claimed on Sveriges television that Estonia had been used to transport military equipment in September 1994. Story 12. 1. North Korea was kidnapping Japanese citizens. Long denied by the left. Turned out to be true. Also, Japanese internal security knew it, but the government decided not to reveal it because that was all they could do. 2. Emperor Komei was assassinated so Emperor Meiji, who was more politically attuned to the revolution, could take over. We do have several emperors who conveniently died at a very opportune moment. 3. Long-ruling Liberal Democratic Party is and was secretly financed by the CIA. Turned out to be true. 4. Who shot first in the Marco Polo Bridge incident? Story 13. I'm Australian. In the 60s, our prime minister went out swimming and disappeared, never to be seen again. There are conspiracy theories that he was captured by a Chinese submarine despite the fact that he was a 6-year-old guy with a fainting habit, a morphine prescription, and a shoulder injury. They named a swimming center after him. Somebody commented, the foolish part of this is believing the country's leader went swimming with no supervision, especially with his medical disposition. While the submarine story seems a bit fantastical, I do believe foul play is likely in this scenario. Story 14. Everyone knows that Carlos Slim became the richest man in the world because President Carlos Salinas sold him a state monopoly in telecom Telemex, and he has retained that monopoly until now. Companies like AT&T and Spirit would eat Slim's empire alive, but the Mexican government has protected his monopoly. The conspiracy part is that many say that the real owner is President Carlos Salinas. Somebody commented, UK David Icke posted this theory about the royal family are actually a consortium of shape-shifting lizards. It's hilarious enough that I wish it were true. Story 15. Argentina, the intel agency suffered unwanted changes from the Kirchner government that caused them to murder Nisman in order to set chaos and blame the president for it, who was involved in an investigation Nisman was doing that incriminated her and other members on the MAIA terrorist attack. This is what I think happened. Somebody commented, the problem with this theory is that I think the side agents would have been smarter and plant some evidence or at least not make it look like a suicide. Story 16. Canadian here. During the federal elections of 2011, there were thousands of people who got phone calls from robots saying that their polling station had been changed the morning of the vote. The stations hadn't been changed, and this led to mass confusion, and tens of thousands of people were unable to vote. In many areas, the Conservative Party only won by fewer than 1,000 votes. Many people believe Stephen Harper's crew created the robot so that he would win the election. Story 17. Recent history. Some people in Russia believe that the MH17 was in fact the other Malaysian Airlines aircraft, the one that was never found in the Indian Ocean. The theory is that the first missing plane had been taken to a U.S. airbase and then stuffed with dead bodies and shot down over Ukraine on purpose to accuse Russia and start World War III. Somebody commented, this is my favorite because it's insane and just links random stuff together. I love conspiracies. Story 18. We surrendered so quickly in World War II because we already knew about the invasion and had a deal with Germany to only offer token resistance. The reason we made this deal was because the son of our foreign minister had been arrested in Germany on charges of homosexuality and was used as a pawn by Himmler in the negotiations. Denmark, by the way. Somebody commented, to be fair, I'm not sure fighting them would have done much good. Story 19. Not as much a conspiracy as shaded in mystery. My country, Trinidad and Tobago, used to have a kill squad of policemen who went out every night and killed as many criminals as they could. It worked and crime went down. If you'd like to Google it, type in the Trinidad and Tobago Flying Squad. Somebody commented, didn't Brazil once have death squads killing homeless people to clean up the streets? Story 20. From Ireland here, and the only thing I can think of which is possibly conspiracy theory is the ABCs, alien big cats. A couple of years ago, there were whispers going around the country of sightings of pumas and other large felines prowling the countryside and messing with the farmer's sheep. It was a big thing at the time and the mystery was never solved. Story 21. Australia. The CIA deposed of the Whitlam government in 1973 in what was a bloodless coup led by Governor General John Kerr and Liberal. That's conservative for you foreigners. Party leader Malcolm Fraser at their bidding. Crazy crap. Don't know how true it all is, but there are a lot of documentaries and articles out there for anyone curious. Story 22. Venezuelan here. Everything here is a conspiracy. President says everybody wants to kill him. CIA, opposition, the old woman who sells ice cream. Government says that we do not have products because of an economic war incited by the US. Colombia wants to frick us up. Heck, I think if I die, it's the opposition's fault or the US's fault. Story 23. We had a series of bombs exploding in the 80s in Luxembourg. The wildest conspiracy theory ranges from, as they never found out about the guilty ones, USA military to some prince to some cops having done it to Russians and worse. It's been almost 30 years and they're still holding court to try and press for answers. Story 24. The CIA was involved in the toppling of one of the most popular prime ministers we've ever had in Go Whitlam, apparently enacting universal health care, free tertiary education, establishing relations with China, and a myriad of other positive progressive policies threaten the status quo too much. Story 25. Mexico. Original Chupacabras attacks were faked by our government in an attempt to distract people's attention from the 1994 post-NAFTA devaluation. Somebody commented, "I have not heard this before and it is now my favorite. Oh no, people aren't liking NAFTA-related changes. Let's distract them with the monster that sucks blood from goats." Brilliant. Story 26. In October 1992, an airplane crashed into a flat in Amsterdam. A day later, 20 men in white suits were seen at the crash site, who didn't speak Dutch and took evidence. According to conspiracy theory, these were Mossad agents and they were the cause of the subsequent health issues in the area. Story 27. Zambia. So far, we've had about 3 presidents die while in office, and we recently sworn a new president. Belief in witchcraft is a total thing here, so the new conspiracy theory going around is that the state house is cursed, and any president that lives there will die during their term. Story 28. Argentina. Nisman death. Nisman accused the president, Christina Kirchner, of covering evidence of one terrorist attack, AMIA, Jews Association. The day he was going to present the evidence of his claims, he was found dead in a bathroom. The government says it was a suicide. People think the government killed him. Story 29. There is this one guy on Reddit that poses as a harmless Redditor and asks other people what their country's conspiracy theories are. But the truth is that this guy is a CIA agent that secretly interrogates people to find out whether their countries are onto the USA's activities in their country. Story 30. UK. Gareth Williams, MI6 agent, died after climbing up into a suitcase and zipping the case up, and then locking it from the outside. No murder here, says UK government. Really now. Magic trick gone wrong or some really shady crap is going on. You decide. Story 31. Britain. Jack the Ripper was actually working for the royal family. Information on this theory is available under national security, so they say. To add, anyone who hasn't read From Heck by Alan Moore, it is really an interesting take on this theory. Story 32. UK. David Icke posted this theory about the royal family are actually a consortium of shape-shifting lizards. It's hilarious enough that I wish it were true. Somebody commented, "That sure is ridiculous, fellow human. Ha ha ha. What a good day to be warm-blooded." Story 33. Stephen Harper is systematically cutting funding to climate scientists in order to shut them up about climate change and foster greater development in the Alberta tar sands. Somebody commented, and then there's the whole thing about him closing down fishing archives. Story 34. Canada. The Prime Minister, insert current Conservative PM here regardless of year, is an American crony in the pocket of the Americans, wants Canada to join the US. Interestingly, there is probably some truth to it. Story 35. Not a conspiracy theory, but 1989 Tiananmen Square's protesters who squared off against a tank man. Yeah, he was drunk out of his mind. Story 36. The royal family killed Diana, or that somebody was actually after Dodi Al-Fayed and they chose that moment to assassinate him, so the focus would be on Diana instead. Somebody commented, "I like that second one." Story 37. In Brazil, many people believe that the international organizations that support indigenous and environmental protection are just a cover-up to take control of the Amazon. Story 38. Mexico. 21 years ago, there was a JFK-like murder of a presidential candidate who was supposed to really change the country. His name was Luis Donaldo Cosolio. Story 39. There is a ton of high-level officials, celebrities, and other untouchables who are part of some crazy child sex ring. That R word and murder kids. Crazy stuff, right? From the UK. Story 40, Pakistan. That our country was basically created to save the landed elite from land reforms that Free India was going to go through after 1947. Story 41. Not from Israel, but I know there's a conspiracy of JK proportions over the assassination of Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin. Story 42. Yor Kader, a right-wing nationalist politician, died in a car crash while drunk driving. Story 43. That our president might have sexual attractions towards men. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.